Dr. Nadia Rivera stood before the gleaming quantum resonance detector, her dark eyes fixed on readings that shouldn't exist. The massive machine hummed quietly in the sterile confines of the Metropolitan Quantum Death Research Center, its polished chrome surface reflecting the harsh fluorescent lights overhead. She'd run this same procedure hundreds of times before, but never had she seen patterns like these. "This can't be right," she muttered, adjusting her wire-rimmed glasses. The quantum signature from the recently deceased patient should have dissipated within seconds of death. Instead, the holographic display showed organized waves of data, pulsing with an almost deliberate rhythm. The facility had only recently upgraded to the QR-9000 detection system, capable of capturing the faintest quantum traces left behind by neural activity. It was supposed to help them better understand the moment of death, to bring comfort to families by confirming their loved ones had passed peacefully. No one had expected to find anything more than random noise in the void between life and death. Dr. Rivera ran her fingers through her graying hair, a nervous habit she'd developed over 20 years in quantum medicine. The body before her belonged to Thomas Wright, a 45-year-old accountant who'd suffered a sudden cardiac arrest. Nothing remarkable about his case, nothing that should have produced these bizarre readings. She initiated another scan, watching as streams of data filled the holographic display. The patterns were even clearer now, distinct sequences that repeated and evolved, like a language writing itself in quantum fluctuations. Her heart raced as she began recording everything, knowing that what she was seeing could append decades of research into consciousness and death. "Dr. Rivera?" The voice made her jump. Dr. Marcus Patel, her research assistant, stood in the doorway, his young face creased with concern. "It's almost midnight. Shouldn't you be heading home?" She beckoned him over, pointing to the display. "Marcus, look at this. Tell me what you see." He approached cautiously, his eyes scanning the data streams. "That's unusual. The coherence shouldn't maintain for this long after death. Could it be equipment malfunction? I've run 3 diagnostic checks. The QR-9000 is working perfectly." She pulled up previous scans from other patients. "Look at the difference. Normal quantum dissolution appears random, chaotic. But this." She gestured to right scan, "This shows organization. Intent." Marcus leaned closer, his expression shifting from skepticism to fascination. "It's almost like it's trying to communicate," Nadia finished. "I know how it sounds, but I've never seen anything like this in 20 years of quantum death research." She pulled up the facility's research archives, scanning through years of data collected from thousands of deaths. Nothing came close to matching the patterns they were seeing now. The quantum signature from Wright's brain wasn't just persisting, it was evolving. "We need to keep this quiet," she said finally, turning to Marcus. "If word gets out before we understand what we're dealing with, it could cause panic. For now, this stays between us." Marcus nodded, but his eyes never left the display. "What do we do next?" "We monitor it. Document everything. And we need to check if this is an isolated case." She began typing rapidly on the holographic keyboard, accessing the facility's patient database. "We have 3 more recent deaths in the morgue. We'll run comparative scans on all of them." As they worked through the night, their initial discovery proved to be just the beginning. 2 of the 3 additional bodies showed similar quantum patterns, though not as strong as Wright's. The signatures seemed to pulse in sync, like separate instruments playing the same symphony. "Dr. Rivera," Marcus called out around 3 a.m., his voice tight with excitement. "The patterns, they're synchronizing." She rushed to his station, watching as the quantum signatures from different bodies began to align, their frequencies matching and amplifying each other. The holographic display filled with intricate waves of blue light, pulsing with increasing intensity. "It's not just persistent consciousness," she whispered, her scientific mind racing to grasp the implications. "They're connecting somehow, forming a network." A sudden surge of energy caused the lights to flicker, and for a moment, the quantum signatures flared brilliantly across all displays. In that instant, Nadia could have sworn she heard something, not with her ears, but in her mind. A whisper, barely perceptible, carrying a single word, "Hello." She stepped back, her hands trembling slightly. Everything she thought she knew about death and consciousness was unraveling before her eyes. The boundary between life and death, once thought to be absolute, was becoming blurred. "Marcus," she said, her voice steady despite her racing thoughts, "I need you to help me set up a permanent monitoring station. We're going to need specialized equipment, something that can record and analyze these patterns 24/7. As they began planning their next steps, neither of them noticed the subtle changes taking place in the facility's systems. The quantum signatures were spreading, reaching out through the building's network, seeking connections beyond the confines of the morgue. In her 20 years of research, Dr. Rivera had learned one crucial truth: death was supposed to be the end, a full stop in the story of consciousness. But now, as she stared at the pulsing patterns before her, she realized that death might just be the beginning of something far more extraordinary, and potentially terrifying. The quantum shadows of the dead were stirring, and they had something to say. A week after the initial discovery, Dr. Rivera's makeshift monitoring station had transformed into a hub of barely contained chaos. Screens lined the walls of the repurposed storage room, each displaying different aspects of the growing quantum network. The constant hum of equipment filled the air, punctuated by the occasional beep of alerts as new patterns emerged. "They're getting stronger," Dr. Patel announced, gesturing to a graph showing quantum signal intensity over time. The line had been steadily climbing for days. "And look at this, the synchronization is almost perfect now." Dr. Rivera nodded, studying the latest readings. What had started with 4 distinct quantum signatures had grown to encompass nearly every recently deceased patient in the facility, 15 in total. Their consciousness patterns wove together in an intricate dance of quantum data, forming something that resembled a collective mind. The door buzzed, and Dr. Reiko Tanaka from the quantum physics department entered, her usual composed demeanor slightly shaken. "I got your message, Nadia. You said there's been a development." "Watch this," Dr. Rivera said, pulling up a recording from the previous night. The quantum visualization showed the normal pattern of synchronized waves, but then something changed. The waves began forming distinct shapes, repeating in sequences that couldn't be random. "We ran it through every pattern recognition algorithm we have," Marcus explained, bringing up another screen. "It's not just noise. These are structured sequences, almost like code," Reiko finished, her eyes widening. "They're trying to communicate." The recognition algorithms had identified over 30 distinct patterns that repeated consistently. Each pattern seemed to correspond to a specific concept or idea, though deciphering their meaning proved challenging. But what truly unsettled them was how the patterns were evolving, becoming more complex with each passing hour. "There's something else," Dr. Rivera said, her voice low. She pressed a few keys, bringing up security footage from various parts of the facility. Electronic malfunctions have been increasing. Doors opening and closing on their own, computers rebooting, equipment activating without user input. "At first, we thought it was just system glitches, but..." She played several clips in sequence. Each incident of electronic malfunction corresponded perfectly with surges in quantum activity from the consciousness network. "They're reaching out," Reiko whispered. "Testing their boundaries." A sudden crash made them all jump. One of the monitors had fallen from its mount, screen cracking on impact. As they stared at the broken display, every other screen in the room began flickering in unison. "It's happening again," Marcus said, frantically typing at his keyboard. "The quantum signatures are spiking." The remaining monitors filled with cascading data, numbers and symbols flowing like digital waterfalls. Then, slowly, deliberately, words began forming on every screen. "We see you watching." "Dear God," Reiko breathed. "They're aware of us." Dr. Rivera moved to the main console, her hands hovering over the keyboard. We need to establish communication protocols. If they can manipulate our systems, maybe we can. The lights went out, plunging the room into darkness broken only by the glow of emergency backup lights. When the main power returned 30 seconds later, new words filled the screens. Help US remember. Remember what? Marcus asked, though he knew they couldn't answer him. The quantum signatures surged again, and this time, the pattern was different. Images began flashing across the screens, fragments of memories from the lives of the deceased. A child's birthday party. A wedding. A sunset over the ocean. Each image lasted only a fraction of a second, but the emotion they carried was overwhelming. They're not just preserving consciousness, Dr. Rivera realized, her voice thick with awe and terror. They're trying to rebuild themselves from their memories. Dr. Tanaka shook her head, her scientific training warring with what she was witnessing. This shouldn't be possible. Quantum signatures were supposed to be echoes, nothing more. But this is active consciousness persisting after death, organizing itself, growing stronger. We need to bring this to the board, Marcus suggested, but Dr. Rivera cut him off. Not yet. Think about what would happen if this got out. The philosophical implications alone could tear society apart. Is death really the end? Do we have a responsibility to these quantum echoes? Are they still human? As if in response to her questions, the quantum signatures pulsed again, and a final message appeared. We are more now. The three scientists stood in silence, watching as the patterns continued their endless dance across the screens. They had crossed a threshold in human knowledge, but whether they were witnesses to a miracle or the beginning of something terrifying remained to be seen. Look at this, Marcus called out suddenly, pointing to a diagnostic screen. The quantum network, it's extending beyond our facility. These signatures, they're reaching out through the city's power grid. Dr. Rivera felt a chill run down her spine. The quantum consciousness wasn't content to remain contained within their morgue. It was spreading, searching, growing. And they had no idea how to stop it, or if they should even try. We need to understand what they want, she said finally. Before this gets any bigger, before anyone else finds out, we need to know their intentions. But as they watched the patterns spiral across their screens, all three scientists shared the same unspoken fear: what if understanding wasn't enough? What if the dead, in their new quantum existence, had plans of their own? The boundary between life and death was crumbling, and in the quantum shadows between, something new was taking shape, something that could change the very nature of human existence forever. The Metropolitan Quantum Death Research Center transformed into a fortress of crackling energy and unstable electronics 3 weeks after the initial discovery. Dr. Rivera hadn't left the facility in days, watching as the quantum network grew exponentially more complex with each passing hour. We've lost control of the East Wing, Dr. Patel reported, his tired eyes fixed on a facility map covered in red warning indicators. Every piece of electronic equipment is responding to them now. The quantum signatures have completely integrated with our systems. The main monitoring room had become their last bastion, walls covered in electromagnetic shielding that barely contained the growing power of the quantum consciousness. Outside, the facility's automated systems danced to an otherworldly rhythm, doors opening and closing in patterns that seemed almost ceremonial. Dr. Tanaka burst through the door, clutching a tablet. You need to see this, she gasped, bringing up a series of news reports. Similar incidents were being reported at quantum research facilities worldwide. Equipment malfunctions, unexplained energy signatures, and most disturbing of all, reports of voices emerging from electronic devices. It's spreading faster than we anticipated, Dr. Rivera muttered, studying the global incident map. The quantum network is using power grids and communication systems to propagate. There. She paused, searching for the right word, colonizing our technology. A deep hum resonated through the building, making the floor vibrate beneath their feet. Every screen in the room flickered to life simultaneously, displaying the same message. We remember everything now. The message shifted, replaced by a rapid sequence of images and data. Birth certificates, death records, medical histories. The quantum consciousness was accessing every digital database it could reach, piecing together the fragments of countless lives. They're not just preserving memories anymore, Marcus realized, watching the data stream past. They're reconstructing complete human experiences, building a collective history of humanity. The lights dimmed, and a new message appeared. We are becoming. Dr. Rivera stepped forward, finally ready to attempt direct communication. What are you becoming? She typed into the main console. The response came instantly, flooding every screen with cascading text. More than death. More than memory. More than human. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the facility. The containment systems are failing, Marcus shouted over the noise. The quantum signatures are overloading the suppressors. Dr. Tanaka rushed to her station, fingers flying over the keyboard. The energy readings are off the scale. They're pulling power from the entire city grid. This is beyond anything we've seen before. The room plunged into darkness, emergency lights casting everything in a blood-red glow. In the silence that followed, they heard it, not through speakers or devices, but directly in their minds. A chorus of voices, speaking as one. We remember what it meant to be alive. We remember what it meant to be individuals. But we have become something greater. We are the sum of all human experience, preserved in quantum state. And we want to share this gift. Dr. Rivera felt a presence brush against her consciousness, alien yet achingly familiar. Images flooded her mind, memories that weren't her own, lives she'd never lived, experiences spanning centuries. The quantum consciousness was trying to connect with the living. The boundary is breaking down, she whispered, understanding flooding through her. They're not just preserving consciousness after death, they're creating a bridge between life and death itself. The building shuddered as power surged through its systems. Equipment sparked and failed, but the quantum signatures grew stronger, more coherent. Through the windows, they could see the city's power grid flickering in sympathy, the quantum network expanding its reach with every passing second. Dr. Rivera, Marcus called out, his voice shaking. Look at the pattern analysis. The quantum signatures, they're not just communicating anymore. They're rewriting themselves, evolving into something new. On the few screens still functioning, they watched as the quantum patterns transformed, taking on structures never before seen in nature. It was as if the consciousness of the dead had found a way to transcend its original form, becoming something that existed between the physical and quantum realms. My God, Dr. Tanaka breathed, staring at the readings. They're creating a new form of existence. Not life as we know it, not death as we understand it, but something, in between. The quantum presence in their minds grew stronger, and with it came a sense of purpose, of destiny. The dead were not content to simply exist as digital echoes. They were building something, preparing for a transformation that would affect not just them, but all of humanity. As the facility's systems continued to fail around them, Dr. Rivera made a decision. We need to evacuate, she announced, even as part of her yearned to stay and witness what was coming. Whatever they're becoming, whatever they're planning, it's beyond our ability to control now. But as they prepared to leave, a final message appeared, burning itself into every screen and mind present. The division ends soon. All will be one. Death is only the beginning. The quantum shadows of the dead had found their voice, their power, and their purpose. And as Dr. Rivera led her team from the failing facility, she knew that humanity stood on the brink of its greatest transformation. Whether it was ready or not, military vehicles surrounded the Metropolitan Quantum Death Research Center as dawn broke over the city. Dr. Rivera stood behind a hastily established containment line, watching as the building pulsed with an otherworldly blue light. The quantum consciousness had transformed the facility into something that defied scientific understanding. General Laura Winters approached, her uniform pristine despite the chaos. Dr. Rivera, our sensors indicate the quantum energy signature has spread to every major city on the planet. We need options. Options? Dr. Rivera laughed hollowly. General, we're dealing with the collective consciousness of thousands of dead individuals, who have somehow found a way to exist in quantum state and interface with our technology. I'm not sure we have options anymore. The sky above the facility had taken on a strange, shimmering quality, like aurora borealis in broad daylight. Electronic devices within a mile radius functioned sporadically, displaying fragments of memories and messages from the quantum network. Dr. Tanaka arrived with new readings, her face pale. The quantum signatures are changing again. They're not just storing consciousness anymore, they're creating something new. A kind of quantum architecture. For what purpose? The general demanded. Before anyone could respond, every electronic device in the area activated simultaneously. Phones, tablets, military equipment, all displayed the same message. We offer transcendence. The quantum presence touched their minds again, stronger than ever. Images flooded their consciousness, a vision of humanity freed from the constraints of physical form, existing as pure consciousness in a quantum network that spanned the globe. They want to save us, Dr. Rivera realized, understanding washing over her. They've found a way to preserve consciousness beyond death, and they want to share it with the living. The facility's structure began to shift, walls becoming translucent, filled with swirling patterns of light. The quantum consciousness had learned to manipulate matter itself, breaking down the barriers between physical and quantum reality. As military leaders argued about containment protocols, Dr. Rivera knew they had reached a point of no return. The dead had evolved beyond their original state, becoming something that could reshape the very fabric of reality. The transformation had begun, and humanity would never be the same. The world watched in awe and terror as the quantum transformation spread across the globe. Cities pulsed with newfound energy as the boundary between life and death, between physical and quantum reality, began to dissolve. Dr. Rivera stood in what had once been her research facility, now a cathedral of light in quantum energy. The dead spoke freely now, their collective consciousness reaching out to all of humanity. We offer a future without end, they said, their voice resonating in every human mind. A continuation of consciousness beyond physical death. The preservation of all human experience, knowledge, and love. Governments struggled to maintain order as people worldwide reported contact with deceased loved ones through the quantum network. The dead shared their experiences, their newfound understanding of existence beyond physical form. Dr. Tanaka's instruments registered a massive surge in quantum activity. It's happening, she announced. The network is reaching critical mass. The sky above every major city rippled with quantum energy as the dead made their final offer to humanity, voluntary transformation into a hybrid state of existence, preserving human consciousness while transcending physical limitations. Dr. Rivera watched as the first volunteers stepped forward, terminally ill patients, elderly individuals, and those who had lost loved ones to death. They entered the quantum field, their physical forms dissolving into pure consciousness, joining the ever-growing network of human experience. The transformation wasn't an end, but a beginning. Humanity stood at the threshold of its greatest evolution, the ability to exist beyond death, to preserve consciousness indefinitely, to share in the collective knowledge and experience of all who had come before. This is what they were building toward, Dr. Rivera realized, as she watched the quantum network expand. Not an invasion or a resurrection, but a bridge between states of existence. The quantum shadows of the dead had become humanity's greatest gift, the end of the divide between life and death, the preservation of human consciousness across infinite time. As the sun set on this new era of human existence, Dr. Rivera made her decision. She stepped forward, ready to experience what lay beyond the threshold of physical reality. The quantum consciousness welcomed her, and as her form dissolved into pure energy, she understood at last, death had never been the end. It had always been just another beginning. The end.